This conference will now be recorded.
Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States
of America and
to
to the republic
for which it
for which it stands, one nation,
God,
under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty,
liberty and justice for all.
Established July 4, 1776 with some modifications.
Glad we weren't trying to sing harmony.
No kidding. All right. 2A, presentation of offshore wind energy planning, I guess. Who's doing the presentation?
I saw Andy Lanier on from DLCD.
Is Andy on and Dr. Hauer? Is she on? Oh, there she is, right there. You're muted though, Dr. Hauer.
Good morning, commissioners. I think Whitney was going to drive, or?
Okay.
I'd like to, yes. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, good.
Oh, great. Okay. I'm just pulling up a presentation here. Let me pull this over here. Okay.
We're seeing your notes screen, Whitney.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right. I actually can't see the folks on the line anymore, but Andy, can you confirm that you can hear me and the right slide is presented?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, and I just want to say thank you for having us to present to the Board of Commissioners meeting this morning. My name is Whitney Hauer. I'm with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, which is called BOM, in the Pacific Regional Office, and I'm located in Camarillo, California, and I'll be co-presenting this presentation with Andy Lanier. So just on the agenda for this morning, we'd like to give you a brief introduction and background on offshore wind energy and BOEM's authorization process, and give you an introduction of our current offshore wind energy planning effort underway. And then Andy will give a presentation on the state's role as well as the offshore wind mapping tool called OraWindMap, and then hopefully some time for some discussion and next steps. So as a brief introduction to offshore wind can provide is a strong and consistent wind energy resource offshore. So in the US, we have both land-based wind resource and then certainly a strong offshore wind resource. And whether for offshore wind, whether it is a fixed bottom foundation or a floating system is dependent on how deep the water is. So on the East Coast, there is advancement in fixed bottom foundations because of the shallow waters, defined as roughly less than 60 meters, which is about 200 feet. And then on the West Coast, we'll be seeing floating systems, and this is because of the deeper waters of over 60 meters or 200 feet. And this is driven by the bathymetry. So on the West Coast, as you can see on the map here, in the areas of dark blue, shows these deeper waters. And then offshore wind turbine technology is available for deployment at 12 megawatts now. And we anticipate on the West Coast that we'll be seeing larger systems of up to 15 megawatt size wind turbine generators. And I just want to be clear that these are large systems. So at the 12 megawatt, the max height of the system is over 850 feet tall. And this is the example of a semi-submersible platform with a catenary mooring system. So there'd be 3 mooring lines for every wind turbine generator. And I won't go into detail on this, but you can see just as a simple schematic here, the humpback whale is shown to show it for relative size. So in terms of the agency that I work for, the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, we're a bureau within the U.S. Department of the Interior. And the mission of our bureau is to manage the development of energy and mineral resources on the outer continental shelf, so in federal waters, and to do so in an environmentally and economically responsible way. So this includes conventional oil and gas, as well as offshore renewable, and then the mineral resources. The jurisdiction on the U.S. West Coast is in federal waters from 3 to 200 nautical miles, and it does exclude national marine sanctuaries, which is more relevant offshore California and Washington. Our authorization process is a multi-year process that occurs in 4 phases, beginning with the planning and analysis phase. And I want to be clear that we're in the early stages of offshore wind energy planning in Oregon, and we're underway right now in a broad BOEM state planning effort to inform the formal start of our leasing process, which begins with a call for information and nomination. In that planning and analysis phase, BOEM continues to work with both the state, the Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Task Force, and other stakeholders to identify wind energy areas before publishing a public sale notice, or proposed sale notice, excuse me, before moving into the leasing phase. After a lease is issued, it authorizes the lessee to provide both a site assessment plan and eventually a construction operations plan for BOEM review and approval. It doesn't allow any quote unquote steel in the water until after final approval. In the site assessment phase, this is when the lessee takes the time to conduct the assessments and surveys needed to inform its construction operations plan. So this includes understanding the wind resource within that lease area, as well as biological information or geophysical, geotechnical information, etc. Once a construction operations plan is submitted to BOEM, this undergoes both a technical and environmental review. And this is when there is the environmental review pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, which undergoes the full review of the proposed project. It's not until after BOEM approves that construction operations plan that there would be any construction on the outer continental shelf. The Intergovernmental Renewable Energy Task Force is an important step or process within our authorization process. And this is a group that provides coordination with the governmental body to provide input into renewable energy leasing. So this includes tribal governments, state and federal agencies, and local governments on the task force. And in Oregon, the task force was reconvened in 2019 to discuss a planning approach. I do want to note that Commissioner Main is on our task force, and Commissioner Cribbins is a designated alternate. In the 2019 meeting, BOEM and LCD, the Department of Land Conservation Development, decided to draft a data gathering engagement plan to present what a planning approach would look like with the state of Oregon. And later, after that meeting, the Oregon Ocean Policy Advisory Council provided a letter to the governor in support of a planning approach. And last summer, the task force met again to discuss that draft plan. And at that meeting, BOEM and the state of Oregon committed to offshore wind energy planning. So that draft plan was finalized after taking into consideration comments that were received at that task force meeting, and that plan is available on our webpage. As we've detailed in the plan, we've noted about 12-month data gathering effort and the need for a tool to collect and visualize data. So the Oregon Offshore Wind Mapping Tool, or a wind map, is something that Andy is going to discuss in his presentation. But in the plan, we had the potential area for leasing, which is in federal waters offshore Oregon, where offshore wind is viable with current technology. So this is in water depths of less than 1,300 meters, where there is a viable wind speed for offshore wind, which is greater than 7 meters per second. And then with respect to planning, we're collecting data and information pertinent to offshore wind development. So this spans from both the potential area for leasing into state waters of the territorial sea, as well as onshore. And that wraps up my part of the presentation, and I'll hand it over to Andy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Whitney. And good morning, commissioners. Thank you for inviting us and for having us. My name's Andy Lanier. I'm the Marine Affairs Coordinator for the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I am Whitney's counterpart as staff support for the task force from the state side, which is one of the reasons why I'm here. The other reason is that as the Marine Affairs Coordinator for the department, it is my job to help coordinate marine policy writ large within the state. And we do have a long history of planning in the state of Oregon, and we have a framework from which to consider potential new uses. That framework is founded on statewide land use planning goal 19, which recognizes and calls out the importance of the protection of important marine habitats, not only for the ecosystem function and services they provide, but also for the benefits to humans who gather and spend time out on the ocean and use it for economic activity and other beneficial uses. My agency, the Department of Land Conservation and Development, was recognized in statute as the agency responsible for helping to coordinate state ocean resources management. And as such, we staff Oregon's Ocean Policy Advisory Council, which is the legislatively established stakeholder advisory body for marine activities. We have been through several planning efforts in the past decade or longer within the state of Oregon, and those efforts have helped us to understand the environment and the human uses out in the ocean. We focused mainly on our territorial sea waters, but because the resources that we care about span and cross jurisdictional boundaries, the state has identified important marine habitats, fisheries, et cetera, that cross those boundaries. And in our latest effort to amend the Territorial Sea Plan, we did so to add a chapter on marine renewable energy, which is part 5 of the Territorial Sea Plan. That chapter contains specific enforceable policies and standards that the state would use when considering new marine renewable energy development. And some of those standards can be applied through the state of Oregon implementing our Coastal Zone Management Act Federal Consistency Review Authority. The state did establish and do an analysis of reasonably foreseeable adverse effects, which is what's cataloged in our geographic location description, or GLD. And so those policies and the plans can be brought to bear when we consider a potential new use, especially as a facility out on the outer continental shelf will necessarily cross state waters for at least some component, and that cables will be brought to shore. Those cables will be handled consistent with how the state has handled cable applications in the past, although we are now beginning to undertake a review of Part 4 of the Territorial Sea Plan, which the legislature passed a bill this last session, which gives our agency some resources to look at and understand the appropriate locations for siting cables on our ocean shore. Next slide, please. But one of the other reasons I'm here speaking to you today is that I spend a lot of my time thinking about networking of information from across the many different providers that have that information on the West Coast. In particular, we have infrastructure within the state of Oregon, including our Coastal Atlas, which is a repository of all the information that's been aggregated to date from our previous spatial planning efforts. And we have a lot of terrestrial geographic information from the state's Spatial Data Library, which is housed and maintained by the Geospatial Enterprise Office. And that includes information that the state needs to do from a planning perspective. So information about imagery or transportation or hydrography, all of those types of information are presented and provided through that Spatial Data Library resource. In addition to state kind of data providers and infrastructure, we also are leveraging federal data providers. Those include some of the national tools like the Marine Cadastre, which includes and stores information about transportation or administrative boundaries or natural resources from work that's done at the national level. And we also pull in specific programmatic office kind of focused data and information like NOAA fisheries, data from the Fisheries Research and Monitoring Groups. The National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, provides resources about how good the wind resources are or other renewable energy types. And so what we have done is pull together information from across all of those different sources into a single curated catalog that we call the West Coast Ocean Data Portal, or a wind map for the tool that's been built. Next slide, please. So here's a screenshot of the Aura Wind Map tool on the left. It's like many other online mapping tools that you would see. There's a catalog on the left and that kind of white window that you can expand to search and browse by topic, or you can search by keyword up at the top. And once you go there, you have access to over 270 different layers of information spanning the range from human use to physical to biological. We also have the records stored in the catalog, which you can see on the right, which allows you to do the same thing, but will allow you to get to kind of the source information behind each of those resources. That's the metadata, which would be associated with those records. Next slide, please. So we have done a lot of work just in the last few months to make sure that the information about our planning tools and the data and information is available. We first conducted an introductory webinar to Aura Wind Map in March of this year. We followed through on that initial effort by hosting just general planning public webinars in May. And then in August, we coordinated reviews of the data sets that are in our tool, either fisheries focused or non-fisheries focused, to get input on the quality of the information and what gaps folks think may exist. So we're working to summarize the feedback that we received during those workshops in August, and that information will be included in the report that will be presented to the task force. Next slide, please. One other thing I should mention is we're also working on a way to pull in the information that's been organized and cataloged in our Aura Wind Map tool onto your local GIS systems through the sharing of GIS files that reference all of those services. So as a portal and as a tool, we're just referencing published services that are being provided by the authoritative sources from across the internet. And these files will allow a user to open up a file on their own machine and then view those same resources being provided through services. That's one of the powers of technology today, is we can connect all these different places across the West Coast to view the best sources of information. Next slide, please. And I'll turn things back over to Whitney here for our next kind of set of anticipated steps.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Andy. So we're continuing this data gathering and engagement throughout our authorization process, but we've been presenting at meetings such as the Board of Commissioner meetings to try to solicit input and feedback for the challenges and opportunities for offshore wind, and to make sure that we have the best available data in the Aura Wind Map. So we look forward to your input. With respect to the task force, we have the save the date on October 21st for a virtual meeting. So these meetings are open to the public to attend, and we do have time slots available for public input, but the meeting itself is focused on the governmental entities. And the purpose of this meeting will be to present the 12-month effort that we've been doing in terms of data gathering and engagement, and to seek input from the task force. Following that meeting, we anticipate working with the state to identify what we're calling draft call areas. So these are to review with the task force in a second meeting. And like I mentioned earlier, a call for information nominations would identify a call area that would describe geographically distinct areas, which we call call area, which is the formal start of our leasing process, to request formal public comment on that area regarding uses or concerns, and also to request nominations of interest for development. So these are activities that we're expected to see at the end of the calendar year or early in 2022. We have a lot of information on our website, bohm.gov/Oregon. And if you'd like to have to receive announcements on BOEM Oregon activities, you can also sign up at bohm.gov/Oregon updates. And in the meeting packet, we've included this presentation along with a few other resources on this planning effort. So with that, I can give you our last slide is our contact information. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present. Feel free to reach out to Andy or myself if you have any questions or comments, feedback, or would like to suggest other organizations that we should be in touch with. And I do want to apologize that I have this other Teams chat going on with another meeting. So I know that you're all seeing those messages. So I apologize for that. So anyway, thank you again for having us, and look forward to any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Hauer?
I have a process question, Chairman, if you have a moment.
Sure.
So, Dr. Hauer, it's my understanding that the call has gone out off the coast of Humboldt County in Northern California. So how long does the process take once that call goes out?
Whitney, we're not actually hearing you. You must have double muted.
Oh, thank you, Andy. I realize that I had just. I'm going to share my screen one more time because I think that there is a general slide that shows about sort of that process for what happens in the early stages of leasing. So I think and I believe that was Commissioner Cribbins, is that correct?
It was.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the question. So just to reiterate, where we are right now in Oregon is in this BOEM state planning effort. And then with Humboldt in California, there's been the leasing process is a little bit further along, and that we are in area identification currently with Humboldt. And so that's roughly what the task is now. The public comment period just closed on that scoping for the environmental assessment for Humboldt. And just this is a rough timeline, but in general, it's about a half a year for that area identification before and moving into the environmental assessment and public involvement prior to leasing. And so the timeline for Humboldt is roughly the fall of 2022 for a lease auction.
Thanks. And I may be asking a question that you can't really opine on, but I guess, for the public, how long between the call going out and them seeing a wind turbine out there? And I realize I'm asking you to speculate on behalf of developers, but is it a year or is it 10 years?
It's closer to 10 years. So it's roughly a 2-year process from that call until the auction and for lease issuance. And then it's another up to 5 years for that lessee or the developer to collect the data and information that it needs to inform its development and to provide a construction operations plan to BOEM. And then that's where the more thorough environmental review goes through with respect to wind development. So that can be a multi-year process. So that brings you, I think, so 2 to 5 to 7, so close to 9 years. So it is a long process, and there are multiple opportunities for public input. So certainly we, in meetings like this, are informally gathering information and would like to make sure that we're available to answer questions or in terms of providing input. But using the Federal Register and is our formal public comment periods, and that is both for the call, for environmental scoping, as well as on the proposed sale notice, up to the
Thank you.
lease issuance, and then that second opportunity with the environmental review for the construction operations plan.
Other questions?
Thank you.
I have a question. This is John Sweet, one of the other commissioners. What level of interest are you finding for the Humboldt area on the Humboldt call?
I think that's a good question, and I am actually, I focus on Oregon activities, and I do have my supervisor, Nancy Sumite, is on the line, and she's the Renewable Energy Section Chief for the Pacific region, and I'm going to ask her to weigh in on California activities.
Well, good morning. Just to, thank you for that question. On the Humboldt wind energy area and for also the Central Coast, we have a total of, right now, from the 2018 call, 14 companies submitted nominations of interest, and many of that is in the Humboldt location. So I mean, there's plenty of interest right now for Humboldt.
Thank you.
Okay. I have a couple questions for Dr. Howard. I met with RWE a couple weeks ago. The German firm has a presence in the United States on wind and solar. So I asked them certain questions, like in a previous BOM presentation, it showed that ocean floor slope was very limited to anchoring of these floating wind mills, I guess you'd call them. Is that accurate? It looked like it was a very narrow band that might be suitable, and they didn't seem to think that was a problem when I talked to them.
I think if I understand the question correctly, is the feedback that you received from a developer on the constraints on slope, which I'm assuming would be for a transmission cable lay and an anchoring system?
Anchoring mostly. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the feedback that we've heard is, that the sort of the site feasibility, and I'm really only going into the bathymetry and slope discussion in terms of, but it's certainly more complicated in terms of the type of seabed material. But that for a 0 to 5 degree slope, current technologies are well understood. And then from 5 to 10 degree slope is some engineering and increased cost and challenges for anchoring on a higher slope, and over 10 degrees is very difficult for these anchoring systems. So that is one layer of information that we've received, is understanding, we certainly have a good understanding of the seafloor bathymetry from NOAA, and then to interpret that data to present what slope would look like offshore Oregon.
Okay. We also discussed, they said they would need port enhancements, and I wasn't sure who was going to foot the bill for those port enhancements. Do you have any idea?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that the West Coast port infrastructure currently is not capable to support a floating offshore wind industry. And I think that's a question that we're starting to understand. That port infrastructure is outside of BOEM's jurisdiction, and I think that the federal government has some role to play, and then the state also has a role to play, and then there's also investments made by developers. And I think there are examples on the East Coast that I can follow up and provide to you. I can note that our office is about to kick off a study to understand the Port of Coos Bay and what type of upgrades would be required in order to support offshore wind. And so we're certainly looking forward to kicking off that study to understand some of those opportunities and challenges, and we'll make sure to provide you those findings.
That would be the same for upgrades to the power grid that we currently have off the coast.
So that's another good question in terms of understanding Oregon's grid infrastructure. Our office provided sort of some studies to this to understand the existing what the existing infrastructure could accept for offshore wind. And so we've worked with both the Pacific Northwest National Lab as well as the National Renewable Energy Lab to look at some of these questions. And some of these initial findings are between 2 and 3 gigawatts of floating offshore wind could be accepted on the Oregon grid without significant upgrades.
Okay, and lastly, I mentioned that Virginia and Rhode Island, the legislatures enacted feed-in tariff, which means that something goes wrong with the project, the ratepayers have to pay for the project, make the investors whole. So I mentioned that to them, and I mentioned also that several years ago, it was discussed in our Oregon legislature, and they didn't seem to discount that there would be a need for feed-in tariff. In other words, the investors want to have some insurances from the legislature, at least for what I inferred from RWE.
That's an interesting piece of feedback. I haven't heard or have that discussion or haven't heard that much feedback. And I think that question is more of a state-driven question and outside of phone, but certainly interested in hearing more. I'm not sure, and Andy, I'm not sure if you can comment to any of this. I know that HB 3375 is looking at what 3 gigawatts of floating offshore wind could be in Oregon, but I don't know if it's going down with the Oregon Department of Energy. I think is leading that effort in sort of developing what that response would look like, and I'm not sure if feed-in tariffs are part of that or not.
It wasn't mentioned as far as I could read.
Okay.
I do know that in Virginia and Rhode Island, the only 2 offshore wind farm or wind projects we have, there's a couple more being considered, one in New York, that the developers and the industrial folks that make the wind energy went to both legislatures and got feed-in tariff enacted, which is kind of scary to our local ratepayers in that if we had some kind of disaster where those windmills were destroyed somehow in a huge storm, that those ratepayers would be on the hook for paying the investors back. That's really got people very concerned.
Well, I just want to, I'm noting your comment, and we also have a note taker on the line, and we have heard in terms of some of the feedback to date in terms of understanding what the cost would be to the ratepayer, and we're summarizing our findings in a draft report, and I think this is an important level of specificity to include, so I'll make sure that's included in our findings as well.
Yeah, the one in Virginia hasn't fully come online yet. They only have the test. One of the people did say that they live in Virginia and they haven't seen any increase in their power bill. Of course they haven't, because the full project hasn't come online yet. It's 300 megawatt, which should supply about 3,000 homes in Virginia. Any other questions for Dr. Hauer or Andy Lanier?
Bob, I have another question. This is John Sweet again. It seems to me that onshore wind has been looked at here on the Southern Oregon coast time and time again. And although I'm not fully tuned into what they found, my understanding is that although we get lots of wind, they found it wasn't really suitable for power generation. It was too variable, too high at times, not enough at other times. Are you finding, you mentioned that we have a 13 plus knot average wind speed offshore. Are there other factors that have been measured to see if it's suitable for this type of operation that you're contemplating? that's being contemplated?
I think that, well, there are a couple of ways I think I'd like to respond. One is that we've been working with the National Renewable Energy Lab, or NREL, to understand the wind resource. And they've done a phenomenal amount of work for both the East and the West Coast, but specifically on the West Coast, and updating their wind resource modeling. I believe it's down to the 5-minute resolution. So in terms of our planning effort, we wanted to have a broad, and this was with input from our task force, a broad planning, a planning effort for the entire coast. And so we needed to put some reasonable bounds on this, and putting where the wind resource, average wind speed of over that 7 meters per second was one of those bounds. But if, as this moves along, and understanding the wind resource would likely go beyond just beyond the resource modeling, and would require for example, the deployment of a LiDAR buoy to understand the characteristics of that wind. I can provide the feedback on a general standpoint that the Southern Oregon and Northern California wind resource is considered one of the best in the world. But the understanding, that any type of variability is something to take into consideration for developers in terms of understanding cut-in speeds or cut-out speeds, sort of, et cetera.
This is Nancy, and maybe I can just add a little bit to that, in that, we generally, offshore wind is more consistent in higher capacity factors than onshore wind. Specifically, for instance, for California, we've done some studies and worked with state to look at the complementarity, for instance, between solar and offshore wind. And in that particular location, you can see that the generation profile is complementary for when solar is not available and then offshore wind is. So I think, that's kind of all part of the resource planning efforts that the state would have to do to see how offshore wind can be there. But generally, I think it's accepted that offshore wind has greater capacity factors and more consistency than onshore wind.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. We will move on to 2A, department heads presentation. 2B, request approval resolution making additional appropriations for Veterans Office. Is Matt on the line? I saw him here somewhere. There he is up there. Matt?
Yep, I'm here. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello. Upon receipt of the application for ODVA funds, it was discovered that our department would be receiving more than what was budgeted. There was also a large carryover from fiscal year 2021 that needed to be added to the budget. The attached resolution increases the budget by $26,455. That's $17,759 additional from ODVA and $8,696 additional carryover from prior year.
I have a motion, please.
I move that we approve and sign resolution 21-09-183B.
A second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? Sounds good to me. Always like money coming in. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2C, request approval IGA 171978 OHA and authorized chair to sign Coos Health and Wellness. Mike, are you on the line? There you are.
Yep, sure am. This is a contract that spans 2 years, and it's for our OHP outreach services. So we go out and help people sign up for OHP.
The Oregon Health.
I move to, yes.
Go ahead.
I move to approve the contract with Oregon Health Authority and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2D, request approval of IGA 171834 with the Oregon Health Authority and authorized department head to sign. Michael.
Yes, this is a contract for our FET program to prepare and respond for major and acute threats and emergencies. It's a one-year contract for $16,000.
Okay, motion, please.
I move to approve IGA number 171834-0 with OHA and authorize Mike Rowley to sign.
Second.
Okay. So this is for major acute threats, like tsunami or something, or what? I don't know.
Well, that's how the emergency response is written out, but the focus of this one is training and preparing medical and healthcare providers.
Okay. Any other discussion about this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, 2E, request approval to purchase galvanized picnic table legs. John Rowe,
Good morning.
Roadmaster.
Morning, John.
We want to replace 75 picnic tables with the galvanized leg tables. They're much easier to handle. And then old heavy wood ones are just all beat up. So these are a lot nicer. So we're going to do another 75 of them this year for
Okay,
$17,640.
all right, motion, please.
I move we accept the quote from Pilot Rock for picnic tables and approve the purchase amount of $17,640 for 75 galvanized picnic table legs and hardware.
Got a second?
I'll second.
Discussion? So how many legs per table?
Well,
Two?
there's two per table.
So we got one left over or one short?
Well, that's sets. That's each one of those is a
Okay,
set.
all right. All righty.
I was wondering the same thing.
I thought I'd throw in a little funny there. Yeah. Any other pertinent discussion about the table legs? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right. 2F, request approval purchase fire rings. John.
Well, the playground, they should have changed that. You got that. It's the playground at Bassendorf. We got the grant.
Okay.
So we put out for 3 quotes. We got 2, one from Playcraft and one from Play and Park. Playcraft was $19 more than Play and Park, but we went with Playcraft for the original grant because they're ADA compliant and they're just a lot better for kids to get on and get off of the set. So we want to go with Playcraft.
Okay. The motion,
I move
please.
we approve the quote from Playcraft Systems for $64,748 and authorize spending authority for a new playground structure for Bassendorf Beach Park.
Yes,
John,
I'll second.
Okay, discussion?
can we add to that motion the authorization for the use of quotes for purchase between $50,000 and $150,000?
Yes, would you please include that, Bobby, in my motion?
And I'll second it. Thanks.
Okay. And just a couple dollars difference really doesn't make any difference anyway.
Right.
Any discussion about this?
Is that price delivered?
What's that?
Will they deliver it to Bassendorf
Yes,
for
they
that
will.
price?
But the grant will cover 54,491, and then the other 10,257's out of our match for that.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, just to thank John for the work that he and the Parks Department are doing in upgrading our parks. There's a lot of work that goes into this, getting these grants and all the planning and work that's going on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good
It's
job.
fun.
Good job, John.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 2G, request approval to purchase Kenworth 8x4 lowboy tractor. John.
Okay, this is off the Sourcewell contract, single source from Pape Kenworth. And it came out, we had in our budget 155,000. And this is gonna cost us 156,398. So it's pretty close to what we budgeted for a 21 Kenworth 8x4 lowboy tractor.
Okay, motion please.
I move to approve the purchase of a new 2021 Kenworth 8x4 lowboy tractor for $156,398.48 from Pape Kenworth.
Have a second.
I'll second.
Discussion. So, not knowing what this, I have a visualization. Is this the tractor and the lowboy bed? Both? Or is just the tractor part?
This is just the tractor.
Okay, all right. Any other questions for John? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 2H, request approval of early termination of probation approval merit step increase. County Clerk Debbie Heller.
Hi, thank you, and good morning, Commissioners. I have an election deputy, Taryn Lay, that I have employed in my election office. I actually employed her December 1st, 2020 through Atlas Edge. We'd been having a lot of trouble with keeping staff, and we were shorthanded, so that was the quickest method to go for. So Atlas wanted to keep her for 3 months on their payroll to make it worth the time. So on March 1st, we did hire her first time through the county. And currently there's 2 staff members without an election director in the elections office. And so there's a lot of responsibility that each of them have. Taryn has been an exceptional employee, and her reviews have been outstanding. And I would like to be able to terminate her 1-year probation effective December 1st, 3 months early, since she was officially working in the office as December 1st, although it was under Atlas Edge at first. And I think the sustainability of the office, it's important for that. And so I'd like to ask you to be able to consider that. HR did a cost analysis. They said it would cost an increase of $456 to move her from step 1 to step 2 and remove her from probation. And that would be able to be covered in my budget.
Okay, motion.
I believe we actually just need a motion to approve resolution 21-09-182P.
Okay. Have a second?
So that's my motion.
Okay, and I second that.
That was my motion.
Okay. So discussion?
Debbie, was that $400 increase per year?
That would cover the 3 months that she would be moved to step 2 early.
Okay.
So it would just finish
So
out
4 times that
year.
for a year. Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I guess my question is, since she's doing so well, why didn't it started in October?
I still wanted to keep it within that 1 year, and her 1 year, she'd be in the office December the 1st. And my budget is tight. I don't know that it would cover it before that. And I was, just trying to keep with the 1 year so it'd be equal among most all employees.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
Thank you very much.
2J, request approval of order granting vacation of a roadway.
I'm not seeing that, Bob.
I don't
I
have
don't
any.
either.
Oh, here it is. No? What?
You skipped I.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's it.
No wonder. 2I, request approval to purchase new vehicle by maintenance. Mike Hagan, are you on? Where are you, Michael? I don't see him.
I don't see him, but I'm happy to handle this.
Here he is. We found him.
Oh, good.
Here, I'll let him take this.
Good morning.
Morning, Michael.
Morning.
Basically what I'm trying to do is I've had a couple of vehicles that I have looked at, and by the time I can get approvals or that sort of stuff, dealerships are selling them out from underneath me. So that's why I do have in my budget $30,000. I'm just trying to be able to have permission to speed up the process.
Oh, okay. So do we have a motion on authorizing ahead of time so you can get one when one comes up? I assume that's what's happening.
Yes. I mean, this is kind of an ephemeral motion. We discussed this during the budget, and it was approved by the budget committee for the maintenance department to purchase a van to carry their tools in. I assume that's the vehicle that Mike is wanting to purchase. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say
The
so.
van.
Yeah.
Yeah. He says yes.
Okay. I move to authorize the maintenance director to purchase a van for the maintenance department for an amount not to exceed $30,000.
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, it's noted in here. Basically, we can't approve a check ahead of time. So while it seems like we're just authorizing him to purchase a vehicle, it will have to come back to the commissioners to sign the hand issue order for the check.
Mhm.
You heard that?
Yeah.
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 Mike understands that.
All righty.
Right.
Any other discussion?
Now, I just wanted to forestall it in case somebody emailed me and asked me, what are we going to do if Mike goes and buys himself a luxury convertible? So.
New.
He said he'd prefer a Harley.
For 30,000 or a Harley. There you go.
All right. Any other meaningful discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Right, Keith? Okay, 2J, request approval ordering a vacation. Jill, are you on? Planning Director, Jill? They're having some medical issues over there, so they may not be on.
I'm happy to handle it for them.
She
They're not
has,
on.
oh, I can see where she signed on, but that's all I see. I don't see, the camera's not on or mic is not on. You want to go ahead, Commissioner Cribbins?
Sure. This is an order to adopt a vacation of a portion of an alleyway in the Portland addition to the Bandon subdivision. It's a pretty long motion. Happy to make it though. Approve and sign order 21-08-0053PL, adopting the vacation of a portion of an alleyway between blocks 1 through 18 and 19 through 36 of block 40. An alleyway located on lots 1 through 18 and 19 through 36 of block 41. A portion of 21st Street southeast of lots 19 through 36 of block 40 and lots 1 through 18 of block 41. And a portion of Tacoma, also known as 22nd Street Southeast, between blocks 19 through 36 of blocks 41 and lots 1 through 18 of block 50, all of the Portland addition to the Bandon subdivision. And that is order number 21-08-053PL.
Okay.
I missed part of that. Would you mind repeating it? No, I got it all. I second that. The motion.
All right. Any discussion about this?
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you. My audio wouldn't connect for some reason.
Okay.
Happens to everybody. Thanks.
Right. Rolf is you have anything to add?
I do not. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else commenting? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 2K, request approval of contract amendment with Right of Way Associates, County Council.
So it's a contract we've had for a while with David Feinauer of Right Away Associates. We're proposing that it gets extended through June 30th, 2022. Right Away Associates has been for a long time working on negotiating leases to expand some right of way along the county's pipeline. Most of that has been taken care of. There's only a few properties left that have been left to be negotiated for a while. So this will likely be the last year we have this contract.
I certainly hope so.
I think what we have remaining may not be resolved through negotiation. So
Okay, so I have a motion, please.
I move we approve the order on the final. Whoops, where am I? Move approval of the contract amendment with Right Away Associates.
Okay, second, please.
I'll second.
Okay, so my comment would be, since becoming commissioner in 2009, this has been going on since then, at least. I was involved, I think Commissioner Sweet was involved, et cetera, trying to get these things resolved. And I would say we give it another year and then terminate this agreement, because it doesn't seem to be progressing in my terms.
Well,
It only runs to middle of next year, Bob.
I know, but
So
it's been extended and extended and extended, and not a whole lot of action's been ever happened.
well,
that's not quite right. There has been some progress.
Well, I know, but not in the last little while. It seems like it's slower than molasses.
Nat,
Council?
could you address that?
I agree that in the last few years, not much has happened. And I think part of that is, my understanding is there was progress. It's just that we are down to a few owners who likely do not want to expand the right of way over their property. And so the negotiations are kind of at an impasse with regard to that. We've spent, in this last year, I've only spent a couple $100 on this contract, I think. So I just want to assure you that we're not dumping a lot of resources into this contract. It's just something that if something changes and we can restart some of those negotiations, I'd just like to have the contract in place for one more year.
All righty, any other discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 2L, request approval order on final decision exclusions from county parks, county council.
Okay, so on the 1st of September, we had a hearing to determine whether 2 Parks Department property exclusions were warranted under the Coos County Code regarding excluding individuals from county property. The board determined that the exclusions were warranted. This order 2109055L puts that decision into writing as required by the county code.
Okay, motion, please.
I move to approve and sign order 21-09-055L, affirming the appealed exclusions from county park properties.
Go second.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 2M, request approval signing letter to Senator Wyden. John, are you taking?
It's yours, John.
Okay, this letter is asking for Senator Wyden to make an inquiry to the BLM about issues regarding the Coos Bay Wagon Road lands. I move we approve signing the letter to Senator Wyden. And Melissa,
I'll
thank
second.
you for your effort in putting this letter together.
Okay. Yeah, I should note we've been having a back and forth with the BLM for quite a while, and it's been trying, to say the least. They really don't want to meet with us. So maybe a little incentive by Senator Wyden might help. That's just my comment. Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, do I have a motion for the consent calendar, please?
Move
Move to
approval
approve
of
the
the
consent.
consent calendar. Second.
I'll second.
All right,
Bobby, you decide.
any
Yep.
discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, 4A, late agenda items. Request termination order 2108048L, council.
Okay, so this order imposed restrictions on motor vehicle access to the county forest due to fire danger. It remains in effect until the board in their sole discretion determines that the fire hazard on the forest has subsided. In light of recent rains, the CFPA has lowered fire restrictions to low. In light of this, we're asking the board to consider terminating order 2108048L.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move
to terminate
order
order.
21-08-048L due to decreased fire hazards.
Not
Okay.
fast enough. I'll second.
All right, discussion?
I would note that should we return to an extended dry period and the fire hazards increase once more, that our county forester has the authority to reinstate these restrictions on short notice, and
Do we
then
know what the
to be
extended,
followed by our approval. Pardon me?
do we know what the extended outlook for the weather is?
Hot and dry.
Yeah.
Hot and dry. I mean,
Good.
Yep. Supposed to be in
maybe,
the 80s 2 days this week, and then there's no rain in the extended forecast.
maybe, I don't know, suggesting maybe we hold off on this for a little bit.
You know, there's probably only 2 or 3 roads we're going to open anyway, because the rest of them have active logging operations behind them or equipment. So I think maybe we could open, you know, on a trial basis, maybe the 2 or 3 roads we're going to open anyway. And if everybody minds their P's and Q's, we can probably leave them open. But if we start having problems, I'd suggest we just close it back up.
I just didn't want open, closed, open, closed, open, closed, and confusing the public.
Yeah, I agree with that too. We're just in a tough place right now, I guess.
You have to weigh that against you know, our attempt to keep the forest as open as reasonably possible for use of the public. And traditionally, we've pretty much followed CFPA's recommendations and either closed or opened the forest in line with their fire risk ratings. And so Lance and I decided to remain consistent with those past practices.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 4B, request consideration to initiate camping restrictions on county property. County Council?
Yes, so just to give some of the background on this, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals case Martin v. Boise that established some limitations on ordinances that make camping on public property illegal if there's nowhere for an individual to go. Then Oregon law, House Bill 3115, has supplemented that case law, and it provides that time, manner, and place limitations on camping on public property have to be quote unquote objectively reasonable. Camping ordinances that are not objectively reasonable may be subject to challenge, with attorney fees going to an individual mounting a successful challenge. And I've attached that bill with this agenda item. So while that bill is not operative until January 1st, 2023, it may be prudent for the county to immediately begin the process of drafting reasonable time, manner, and place camping restrictions with regard to county property. Part of the reason for that is the cities of North Bend and Coos Bay have already enacted these ordinances in response to HB 3115. These ordinances could have an impact on the number of individuals camping on county property in the near future. And I've also attached the city of Coos Bay rules for people to look at. So I'm just suggesting that we initiate the process that, I'm authorized to engage in preliminary research, gathering example ordinances and drafting a memo of options for the board, and also to work with the planning department to determine the zoning on or adjacent to county property and right of way where feasible. And then once this is complete, to schedule a work session to discuss the details and provide the direction needed for me to draft something if the board wants to move forward with it. And like I said, we're going to have something by the end of next year, but I think it's a good idea to start looking at what we want to get into place as soon as possible.
Okay. So
I move we initiate a process to create a time, manner, and place ordinance restricting camping on county property.
Okay, a second.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I think given the attractiveness of our county forest for camping and the risks that unauthorized camping present in terms of fire and other damage to the forest, that this is very important to do.
I agree. And County Council and I have spoken about this. I think it's very important that the county gets out in front of this with North Bend and Coos Bay already creating their ordinances. It's important that we also specify where camping is allowed and not allowed.
So, tongue in cheek, I can't sell my house and get my camper and park it at the courthouse?
We'd allow some people, but not you.
Okay, so any other meaningful discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 All right, T4C, request approval IGA with City of Coos Bay authorized chairman to sign. I guess that's about it. So
That's mine. The county and the city together have applied for a community development block grant called the Emergency Small Business and Micro Enterprise Grant Assistance, with the county acting as the lead applicant, and CCD will administer that grant. So I would move to approve the IGA with the City of Coos Bay and authorize Chairman to sign.
I second that.
discussion. So who could qualify? I'm not aware of who would qualify.
Small businesses that are located within Coos County and CCD is going to administer it. By Coos Bay joining, it also includes obviously businesses within the cities.
Yeah.
The grant is more appealing and we're more likely to get it funded if there's that partnership between the county and the city. It's part of the suite of business assistance that Business Oregon has rolled out during this COVID grant funding that they have been passing through.
So they need to contact CD for details.
They would. The eligible businesses include businesses immediately impacted by public health restrictions, businesses that were generally stable / strong prior to the crisis. So basically, you can't start a new business right now and then go apply for COVID assistance. It's just to stop that sort of fraud. Businesses that employ low to moderate income individuals, micro enterprise businesses, which we have a lot of in Coos County. Those are businesses that employ 5 or fewer employees and the owner is low to moderate income, and businesses that have been in business for a minimum of 1 year. And the grant funds are intended to ensure that the businesses will survive these restrictions that are currently in place.
Okay.
It's not a ton of money. I was trying to look and remember what the funding restrictions were, but for a lot of small businesses, it will be enough to help them, stay afloat.
Does this have a time limit? Get within 2021?
A time limit to spend down the funding? We haven't had any trouble finding enough grant applicants to spend down all the funding that we've received.
It does talk about a 36-month term.
Okay.
And I would point out that I think CCD has been stellar in administrating grant funding such as this, so that we have a good partner there.
Mm-hmm. They did well on our last one.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, T4D, request approval, letter of support for the Port of Coos Bay. Melissa?
Well, I'm scrolling down. Yes, the Port of Coos Bay has reached out and asked if we would support their funding request to Oregon Department of Transportation for Connect Oregon 2021 funds for their continued rehabilitation of the Coos Bay rail line. And so attached is a draft letter, and it just emphasizes the importance of the rail line for our local economy. And as you guys know, when the port took over the rail line, there was a lot of deferred maintenance. It's been almost 10 years now. And while they've been working really hard, to find funding and to deal with the deferred maintenance issues, clearly there's still a lot of work left to be done.
I would say so. Motion, please.
Yeah. I move to approve the letter of support to ODOT on behalf of the Port of Coos Bay for Connect Oregon 2021 funds.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? Other than what I said, it really needs a lot of help, especially if they're going to do this container facility. They're going to have to increase the height of the tunnels and make sure that all the crossings on all the waterways are sound and secure. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All righty, citizen comments. Anybody have a citizen comment that's on the line? Anybody? Citizen comments? Okay, third time, citizen comment. I heard something. No citizen comments?
You might
Okay.
tell them if they're on the phone, Commissioner Maine, if they're on the phone, I think they have to do *6 to unmute.
Okay, *6. Anybody want to make a comment? Apparently *6 is the magic button. Okay, hearing none. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Sweet or Commissioner Krivitz?
Go ahead, Melissa.
I'm happy to talk first. Okay. So we had our Association of Oregon Counties District 4 meeting last week, which we were hoping to have in person, but given the changed public health restrictions, we had it virtually. Commissioner Maine did a nice job locating a location and all that for it before the meeting changed, and hopefully we'll have the meeting in Coos County next year. I've been attending the other district meetings also for Association of Oregon Counties in my role as AOC president, and they're all interesting. It's interesting to listen to the other counties talk about their issues. They tend to be really similar. It's just different in the way we all approach them. I also attended County College sporadically last week, Thursday and Friday in my role as AOC president. And it's interesting to realize that most of those commissioners have been in County College together for a year, but have never actually met each other in person. So we have committed to holding.
When you're in it too.
I know, nothing changed. I was hoping still to get a valedictorian ribbon like Bob has. So.
I know you're still jealous.
We have actually, I am. I'm going to steal it one day. We've committed to holding the AOC conference in person, and those commissioners will have sophomore seminar this year, which hopefully will give them a chance to meet in person and make those connections so they have other commissioners to reach out to in other counties when they have questions or concerns or thoughts on issues, because I think we all find it invaluable. Also, it's been a busy AOC couple of weeks. We had our regular committee meetings and our legislative and board meetings last week. Also, I've had several meetings about economic development projects. There's a lot of funding out there from the state and federal government right now, and a lot of people that would like to apply for projects and would like the county to consider being sponsors for that. So any of those that we do consider being sponsors for, obviously will come in front of the Board of Commissioners. These are just early scoping meetings. We had our ARP funding meeting with our department heads to talk about what to use the county's limited American Rescue Plan funds for, and to make the best use of those dollars in investments that will allow the county to function more efficiently in the future. Also had, I think, 2 meetings about the Oregon Coast Trail, which is hopefully the final route will be scoped by the end of this year. Commissioner Sweet has been a convener for at least one section of that, and that seems to be going reasonably well. And also have been having meetings about the Elliott State Forest, and there is another one tomorrow that I know Commissioner Sweet intends to attend, and I'm hoping Commissioner Main will attend too, where they talk about the habitat conservation plan that they're getting ready to submit, and possible governance issues moving forward, as there is a commitment, I believe, to trying to find a solution to present to the legislature for next legislative session. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Commissioner Sweet?
Yes, for me, on the 8th of September, I attended virtually the Oregon Board of Forestry meeting and testified there on behalf of the county forest trust lands regarding their plans and particularly using the forest as a carbon sink and some of the limitations that could put on harvest. Sat in on the Elliott Advisory board meeting just to see what was, or committee meeting just to see what was going on there. That same day, Friday of that week, the 10th, attended the District 4 meeting, AOC meeting, as Melissa already said. And prior to that meeting starting, sat in on AOC Development and Transportation and Development Committee meeting. The same on the 13th, sat in on another AOC committee meeting for natural resources. And the legislative committee meeting of AOC as well. 14th, attended the monthly Coos Watershed Association meeting. I continue to be impressed with that group and the staff and they have, and the energy they have in improving salmon habitat. Later that day, sat in on a Tide Gate meeting virtually, a statewide effort to make the Tide Gate restrictions and permitting process more simple. They seem to have been moving ahead in that direction. And then Friday last week, participated in the Forest Trust Land Advisory Committee meeting with the Oregon Department of Forestry, where we discussed the draft goals the Department of Forestry is proposing for management of the county forest trust lands. At this point in time, their plan would be to reduce the harvest to less than half of that acreage. So we're working hard to get that changed. It's an uphill battle. I may have mentioned at our last Board of Commissioners meeting that we've engaged and funded through TSOC, Travel Southern Oregon Coast, and a new foundation in town, the Judith Ann Mogan Foundation. We engaged a group from Oregon State's Department of, or College of Forestry, which has an outdoor recreation department, to do a facility study for our bike trails. The trails are becoming increasingly popular, not only amongst our own citizens, but amongst people from out of the area. The group that came down, was a 2-man group, came down, were really, really complimentary about the bike trails, the quality of the trails, everything about them. They were very excited, so excited that they took me out on a little ride, which I crashed and had to go to the doctor. A shoulder injury. Bob, we probably shouldn't be doing stuff like that. Melissa, you're still young enough to give it a go. Any rate, they were very pleased, and they'll be presenting some recommendations to us for what we might do to protect and perhaps even upgrade the quality of that. What's turning out to be really a nice resource our county has, and I want to give a shout out to what was the organization that Bandon Dudes that led the charge on that, their foundation,
Wild Rivers Coast Alliance.
Wild Rivers Coast Alliance, and Melissa. They teamed together to make that feasible for us, and our forestry department head Lance has done a good job of helping make that a reality, and it's turning out to be a good thing for our county. So that's all I have.
All righty. As I mentioned earlier, I had a meeting with RWE, which is a German-based firm, although they have presence in the United States. As I understand it, they're the second largest wind and solar company in the world, but I may have that wrong. Discussed different things like the feed-in tube and the ocean bottom and the grid onshore and the port enhancements, that sort of stuff. Met with TLBP, 10 Mile Lakes Basin Project, our monthly meeting. That meeting on the ARP funds that we designated, I do believe that we use some of those funds to forgive the licensing for next year for restaurants and pools and public pools and other things too. So that'll be a nice break for those folks that all have businesses. I attended with John. John's the vice president. I represent the Southern Oregon for Forest Trust Lands counties. And I had to leave early to go show a county-owned piece of property that's we have for sale. But before I got off of the seminar with the Department of Forestry and their presentation of all of their new forestry requirements, etc., I did say that while I have read all of those, even though I have not voiced an opinion or an objection to that, doesn't mean that I in any way accept their presentation of their new forestry plan, HCP, etc. It is alarming to me how they might present such, want to be nice here. Well, anyway, how they could present such things, because it's truly bad in some cases. And with that, any other comments by anybody? Hearing none, in that case, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.